number 2. I have finally gotten the sleep that I needed, and it's time to finish this out.
This was something which was quickly agreed to by Zavala, who even told Crow not to say a word. Humanity conduct a different form of justice. Saladin's life from that moment would be forfeit, but it wouldn't mean his death. Instead, she demanded justice in the form of a lifetime of service from Lord Saladin. He would become her Brachus, and he would serve her faithfully on the war council of her empire until the end of his days. This was something which was quickly agreed to by Zavala, who even told Crow not to say a word. Humanity and the Cabal had been close in this moment to all-out war. We weren't just going to allow Crow to die. Saladin's moment of absolute bravery had saved diplomatic relations between the Cabal and humanity by preventing an all-out war. Even better, it had brought the two peoples closer. Now, the two were interlinked. A Guardian on Keitel's War Council would also be able to represent us, and to put our interests into the Cabal's considerations. Even as many Cabal would protest the appointment, Saladin would need to prove himself. He did so in the way of the Cabal, through the rites of proving. When there were some who came to challenge him, he defeated every challenger, and within the space of less than a week was promoted from Brachus to Valus. Thus, the newly anointed Valus Forge would be one of Keitel's greatest warriors, and was appointed command of his own Cabal legions. The legion under his command would be trained in a different manner than those typically seen in the Cabal Empire. Saladin would call them his Iron War Beasts, his personal guard, and he would use his hundreds of years of training to create an elite fighting force amongst their ranks. Thanks to bravery here, Keitel and humanity would see closer cooperation in the months to come. And this would be important. Other forces were moving in the system. The Witness would quickly look to replace its first disciple. There would be one obvious contender, one who had already willingly offered himself up. And his ascension would be the next priority of the Black Fleet. Our close alliance with the Cabal and the other forces within the system would morph into a wider cooperative force as time went on. The Elixni of the House of Light and the Awoken of the Reef would join Keitel's Ascendancy and the Guardians of the Vanguard to form what would be known as the Coalition. Together, we would stand as the last bulwark against the Witness and its desire to impose the final shape upon the universe. The first test for this fledgling alliance would arrive soon above Luna in the form of the Leviathan. It had previously disappeared after the Black Fleet had taken our worlds, but now it had returned. But instead of the opulent gold trimmings and white marble that it had once had, it was infested with the same egregore fungus that we'd found on board the Glycon. Worse still, the Leviathan was attempting to forge a link between its own systems and those of the Pyramid of Luna that awaited below. All this was being done at the direction of Emperor Callus, and he was making these preparations in order to begin his ascension into a disciple of the Witness. He needed to bind himself and his mind to the Pyramid of Luna. His success would grant him incredible power, but a failure in this regard might buy us time. Nightmares from the pyramid began to entrench themselves aboard the Leviathan as the energies of the two vessels began to merge. Members of our coalition would be closely and personally targeted as we attempted to board the Leviathan and stop Emperor Callus. Some amongst our number, like Ikora Rey, would stay away from this threat. Her nightmare wore a painful face, the face of Cayde 6. Others had to face their fear though, and would go to Eris to seek out her counsel. Much to their disappointment, The only way to solve this problem would be painful. She would use her magics to bind them together in a ritual with the Crown of Sorrow. By binding our nightmares to the crown, we would be able to pass into the deepest parts of the Leviathan and would be protected from the nightmares. The crown could also be used to contain and release these nightmares in conjunction with a device of Eris's making, the Nightmare Harvester, a wicked contraption that would direct the torment of our foes and allow us to control the forces of Nezarek's waking vessel, dominating them in the same way that they had dominated us. Manifestations of fear would no longer stop us. Despite our newfound alliance, Empress Keitel would initially reject taking part in any such ceremony, calling into question Eris's witchcraft as a danger to the cause. After all, Toro Bartel had fallen because of Hive sorcery, and it was a predictable thing that the Empress would be less than pleased with Eris's solution, considering what had happened to Galran previously on the Leviathan. Too many Cabal had already been lost by meddling in Hive sorcery. But the rest of us, who had spent a significant amount of time around Eris, fighting off the Hive gods and delving into the occult, understood that this was our best chance. And so we entered into the binding ritual, alongside Crow and Commander Zavala. Each of them would be haunted by unique nightmares, nightmares that would tear at their psyche, and give them the greatest reminders possible of the pain of their past. Crow would be haunted by an all-too-familiar nightmare, a nightmare of his former self, Aldrin Sov. It taunted him across the Leviathan and was quick to remind him of all the evil he had done in his past life, of all the pain he had inflicted. He was reminded of the deaths of the Awoken, of the barons he had unleashed upon the reef, and of the murder of Cade, which had harmed so many people he'd come to love. Only by facing his shame and understanding that he could use these experiences to become a better man would Crow find peace. Zavala was haunted by grief, a grief that had been born of a long-lost part of his past, of his wife, Sophia. He had been driven to grief so deep that its extent is hard to fathom. He had failed to protect their adopted son, Hakim, back in the Dark Ages. During the middle of his training as an Iron Lord, he had left Saladin's tutelage specifically to start a family with Hakim and Sophia. But, ultimately, the failure to protect his son had haunted him for the rest of his days, and he would continually ask his wife for her forgiveness. But there was nothing to forgive, even as he kept asking. Ultimately, they had to separate, something that drove pain even deeper. Sophia remarried and had a daughter, and when Sophia passed, her family line, each generation, would see Zavala visiting them. He continued to ask for forgiveness, an unending torment folding itself inward down the generations. The commander had asked forgiveness so many times that the torment was perhaps built in, a grief and sorrow that we can't fathom. Ultimately, the only person the commander needed to forgive was himself, and in doing so, he was able to press forward. Both Crow and Zavala had many challenges to face, but they would press forward, and they both conquered their nightmares. They were manifested things of darkness, but they were not necessarily evil. The nightmares that they were turned instead to memories, positive manifestations of darkness that could remind them of the nature of their own strength, of the trials they had conquered, and of how far they had come, of what they had learned. But they were not alone. A third member of their cadre needed to confront their own nightmares, and of course, it was Keitel. Her nightmare manifested as the form of Dominus Gaul. He was a role model that Keitel had long looked up to, but she also knew that his ways were insufficient for the times at hand. The Cabal needed to change, but Keitel was overtaken with the burden of her responsibility, and with her failure to defend her homeworld. She was defenseless against the nightmares, but Eris would eventually convince her to join the Guardians in the binding ritual, and so we were able to help her in her next attempt to banish the nightmare. When she faced Gaul again, it was with renewed strength and with a greater resolve, understanding that his ways were the ways of the past and that her ways could chart a better future for the Cabal. One not of her father's greed or of Gaul's brutality, but her own way. A way of honor, cooperation, diplomacy, and alliances. A new Cabal that would grow beyond their previous reputation and their restrictive past. With the nightmares turned into memories, we were all guarded against Callus's defenses. It would soon be time to infiltrate the heart of the Leviathan, but there were other avenues for us to investigate in the meantime. In her searches of the inner parts of the Leviathan, Eris Morn had discovered the old tribute hall that Callus had dedicated to us. There she had found a statue, within which there was a thread of Callus's mind. She had ensnared that thread and crafted a ritual that would allow us to infiltrate deep into the inner reaches of Callus's own psyche. Using this, we would understand Callus's motivations better, as well as his weaknesses. And so, the mind heist began. But what we saw was that Callus's mind had been cleft in two. There was a duality in his soul. On one hand, there was a side of him that was being tortured by the past and by the people who he had loved or who he had thought he had been betrayed by. On the other hand, there was a dark and reverent fervor that would lead him to being exalted as one of the Witness's disciples. Purpose and regret sat side by side in Callus's mind. But at the heart of it all, beyond the Midnight Coup's conspirators, beyond Galran and Callus's failure to marshal the Hive, there was a greater shame. At the heart of it all, we learned that Callus's greatest shame was also his greatest love. His daughter, Keitel. She had been his betrayer. And ultimately, it would be the thing that wounded him the most. He knew that he had failed her as a father, even though he believed that he had tried. It would haunt him more prominently than any nightmare we had faced. Even to his final moments, he would think of Keitel and think of his failure. Armed with this knowledge and protected against the nightmares of the pyramid, we ventured back into the deepest parts of the Leviathan and fought to infiltrate the heart of the vessel and to stop Callus before he could merge with the pyramid. We would be drawn into the pyramid vessel itself in the process, and alongside Keitel, we would face down the nightmares we had fought once again. But this time, instead of being forced to retreat, we were victorious. In breaking them, we also undid Callus's connection to the pyramid, preventing his more immediate transfiguration into a great disciple of the Witness. Keitel took one last moment to mourn the father that she had known. There was nothing left of him. Who he was now was lost to the Witness. The father that she would inevitably need to kill was not the same as the man that at one point she had loved as a father. Zavala and Crow took a moment to say farewell to the manifested memories of Aldrin and Sophia. Their pasts had been put behind them, and though it took time for the scars to heal, they were taking their first steps. Within the deepest reaches of the Pyramid of Luna, we stood victorious, broken, beaten, reckoning with our past, but still alive, still united. The strength of the coalition had held, and soon it would be tested once more. Nezarek's presence would begin to grow louder and louder, and soon our other allies would be called to hunt down those echoes until they could at last be reunited. And an all too familiar villain awoke from the ice. After the nightmares of the Leviathan had been quelled, A surge of activity began on Europa. Eramis had been released from her icy tomb by the Witness. It had demanded a task of her, and expected success without delay. It was her Dark Master now. The freedom that she had sought for the House of Salvation was nothing but an illusion. She would be forced to rally her forces in the Witness's name. And now, she would serve its dark purpose. It showed her a series of relics that Eramis recognized. Many had been claimed in the past of the Eliksni during the great days of the pirate cruise. Her task was simple: collect them. The punishment for failure would be severe. Eramis would get to her feet and would reunite with some of her oldest allies, her pirating crews. The old Eliksni pirate legends of the system would flock to her cause. The ship-stealer was on the move once again, and as both ship-stealer of the Devils and Kell of Salvation, she would find these relics for the Witness. The hunt was on. But for us, this hunt would begin with a favor for the Drifter. Eramis's pirates had intercepted one of his shipments, and the Drifter had asked us to kindly retrieve it. As it turned out, it was the Spider, holed up in a containment pod. The Spider had decided in the recent years that it was time to go to ground, especially considering that Mara Sov did not take kindly to the way that he had treated Crow during his time of occupation with the Spider. And so in order to avoid Mara's wrath, Drifter and the Spider had cut a deal. The Drifter would smuggle him out, and the Spider just needed to sit tight. Now, Spider told us that if we were to get him out, we would need to commandeer his old ketch and exfiltrate him. Spider had overheard a few of House Salvation's dregs talking about the new goal that the house had been set by their Kell. Now we knew that we needed to search for these artifacts in order to keep them out of Eramis's hands. Riding out on the ketch, we returned to the lost city with our crew. Spider would now be under the protection of the House of Light, answering to his new Kell, Mithrax, who he seemed to have a strange degree of familiarity with. And so, the Spider, Drifter, and ourselves would unite alongside Ido and Mithrax. Together, this motley crew of Lightbearers and Eliksni would search for the relics and attempt to secure them for the Coalition. Ido was a relatively new arrival in our eyes. We had briefly spoken with her during the time of the Endless Night, but now we would meet Mithrax's adopted daughter firsthand. She was more than simply Mithrax's daughter, though. She was the scribe of the House of Light, and a competent one at that. Her curiosity was something that would consistently guide her on expeditions, and whilst it would sometimes put her in danger, it was also an incredible boon, allowing her to uncover secrets that few others had ever thought possible to exist. She would be responsible for researching the nature of the relics that we were trying to uncover. Mithrax was uneasy being around these old crews, and was also uneasy being around the relics that we were collecting. There was indeed a terrible darkness to these relics, but there was something more to Mithrax's fear: familiarity. It was relatively clear that Mithrax had interacted with these relics at some point in his past, but the true nature of his connection to them wouldn't be revealed to us just yet. The relics were scattered across the system, but they each contained a dark power that made them valuable items to possess. They had universally fallen into the hands of various pirate warlords and smugglers, and we consistently raced Eramis to each one of them when they were located, often beating her to the punch by only a matter of moments. Gathering more and more of these relics to our side only made Mithrax more and more uneasy, and eventually, Ido's curiosity was piqued by a transmission from Eramis. She made contact with Ido and Mithrax and demanded to parley with us on neutral ground. She made this request in keeping with old Eliksni customs. Her honor was at stake should she break the contract, and so all approached with the idea of peace and parley in mind. But the words that Eramis spoke would be her true weapons of war, and she would use them to drive a wedge between Mithrax and his daughter. She would reveal the truth of Mithrax's past and why he held the relics in such fearful regard. As it turned out, long ago, Mithrax's mother had done the unthinkable. She and her crews had been on the moon and had narrowly escaped death by the Hive as she had entered the Pyramid of Luna, Nezarek's pyramid. Within the vessel which had invited them in, she found Nezarek's body. Sensing the power within it, she and her other crew members dissected the body of the dead disciple. These pieces were distributed amongst the pirate crews, and from them they drew dark and terrible power. Mithrax inherited one such relic, one of Nezarek's talents perhaps, a gift from his mother. With its power, he had turned into a powerful pirate lord and had terrorized the system in his early days. Eliksni, human, awoken, it didn't matter. He would watch them all suffer so that he might get his way. The Spider had long hinted to this darker version of Mithrax's past, and as it turns out, the Spider and his now deceased brother Civix, the former leader of the Kel's Scourge, were members of Mithrax's crew for a time, members that had been exiled by Mithrax. With the truth now revealed, Eido was beyond infuriated with her father for not only keeping the truth from her, but also for the nature of his actions in the past. It would not be easy for her to forgive him. But much as Eido might have understood the knowledge of the past, the context of actually living it is a different thing. The Drifter would try and speak to her. His time in the Dark Age had shown him the hostility and harshness that the world had unveiled itself to contain, and he would attempt to get her to empathize with her father's position at the time. Unfortunately, Eido was not so easy to trust, and the reckless streak born of her curiosity was only emboldened by the discoveries about her father. As we recovered more of the relics, her trust might slowly mend, but it wouldn't quite fully heal in time for what would happen next. Things came to a head in the battle for the final relic. Eido had gone ahead and claimed it personally, but Eramis was hot on her trail, as were another force, the Lucent Hive. Their reason for desiring the remains of Nezarec was unknown, but in a somewhat unexpected turn, Eramis would defend Eido from the Lucent brood. Eido and Eramis were technically enemies of different houses, but in Eido, Eramis had seen hope, a new generation of Eliksni that might be free of the old rot that clung to herself and Mithrax. They were both relics themselves, relics of a generation that had known nothing but war and strife, the betrayal of the Great Machine, the darkness of the Whirlwind, the terror of the Long Drift. Eido had not been born into these times, and so she had a chance to live a life for herself, to live a life governing the new future of the Eliksni, a future
Hello,
that
Emma.
could
Welcome.
be improved.
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
And so, the Kell of Darkness defended the Scribe of Light. Eventually, we arrived on scene, and we saw Eramis with her blades drawn and Eido defenseless. With this, Mithrax immediately assumed the worst and engaged Eramis in a duel. With the aid of his splicer tricks, he came out on top in easy fashion. Only Eido's words about how Eramis had defended her would stay Mithrax's hand from dealing a killing blow. With a momentary break in combat, Eramis would flee from battle and would leave the last of the relics in our possession. She retreated and knew that whilst we would celebrate our victory, her house would bear the brunt of the failure she had just delivered to the witness. It does not forgive, and it expects results from its supplicants. Its wrath would soon be felt across the entirety of the House of Salvation, and Xivu Arath would be the one to bring them their dark deliverance. With all the relics acquired, we had time to focus our resources on the matter of peace for a while. We helped rebuild the Eliksni Quarter in the former Botza district, and with his people safe, Mithrax had time to study the relics in safety. And though he used that darkness within the relics, he channeled them for a power of good. proving yet again that darkness is not evil, but instead is a neutral force. The darkness is a power linked to the mind and to memory, and Mithrax's hope was that he could distill that darkness into a purer form. With its ability to provoke memory and emotion, this pure essence was distilled into a medicinal solution, one that would finally give Saint 14 the time to rouse Osiris from his long slumber. After a happy reunion, Osiris would tell us of the things that he had gleaned while sleeping. During his abduction, he had seen into Savathun's mind, just as she had walked in his body, and from there, secrets had been taken. He had seen visions of a distant city on Neptune, and of a secret that Savathun had hidden away there long ago. Osiris would spend the next few months searching ravenously for answers. When he did find them, it would be in the form of an old ally who had returned from the brink of death. It was time for Anna Bray's work to pay off. It was time for the warmind Rasputin to arise one last time in the defense of humanity.
Was good.
Anna Bray had been working on Rasputin's systems for months now. Osiris's return had prompted her to redouble her efforts, given that only Rasputin could seemingly verify the existence of a hidden human colony on Neptune. Despite having a vast amount of Rasputin's data saved from the Martian Pillory engram, the data was still incomplete. If we were going to successfully reconstruct a war mind, we would need the assistance of its other creator. This was the assessment of Osiris. Clovis Bray I would need to be involved in order to salvage Rasputin. Descending upon his complex on Europa, we discovered quickly that his position was being overrun by the Hive and the Wrathborn of Zivur Wrath. They were quickly pursuing Clovis, but they had clearly returned to the system in force to accomplish more goals than simply this. The House of Salvation troops that were fighting alongside Zivu's Hive were also different. They no longer had their free will. They were Zivu's latest Wrathborn, the dark soldiers that had been corrupted by her influence and the cryptoliths, turned into mindless beasts of war. Aramis's house was being punished, and this was not the only way in which that punishment would manifest. The return of the War God had created another reason to resurrect Rasputin. It could be a powerful weapon, and if its Warsat network could be brought online again, it could be used in a decisive manner to defeat Zivur Wrath's forces. After saving Clovis from the Witness's forces, he agreed to assist us in rebuilding the Warmind. He arrogantly stated that he would be required for the process, as only a mind of his singular genius could possibly be trusted to coordinate this Herculean task. And so Anna took a moment to transfer him from his facility on Europa into her prototype exoframe, where Rasputin was being rebuilt. This would allow Clovis to more closely monitor the Warmind's restoration. In order to return Rasputin to life, we would need data, mountains of it. The data needed to construct Rasputin once more could be found in his old subminds, such as Charlemagne and Malahayati. Acquiring these old fragments of knowledge would be like finding pieces to a puzzle, and slowly we would rebuild the Warmind. Some of the Warmind's own code would also be able to help us. The more of it that there was, the more Rasputin would be able to reconstruct on his own. His heuristics would be able to fill in the gaps. But even as we embarked on this task, Elsie Bray would caution us against trusting Clovis too much. She had dealt with him plenty of times before, and she knew that he relied on his manipulative character to get his own way. She also knew that his agenda was often not to be trusted. He was self-serving to the maximum. If he was working to rebuild Rasputin, there was bound to be a reason for it. As we worked to reconstruct the Warmind, we uncovered yet more of its secrets. Floating in orbit above the last city, there was an orbital platform known as the Seraph Station. It contained yet more Warmind data, and also held the possibility to be a command station for the Warsat network should the need arise. A powerful asset to secure for sure. But at the station's heart, we saw a terrible sign of what had happened to the House of Salvation. They had raided the facility for certain, but they were not led purely by Elixni. They were led by Hive, they were led by Wrathborn, and then the sign of the witness's cruelty could be seen firsthand. Praxis, the technocrat, an Elixni we had killed back on Europa, had been risen by the witness as a scorn. Infused with darkness, his ether had been corrupted, and he had become an undead. Eramis reached out to us in this moment. She made it clear that this was the fate of her house, and that it was a regret that would travel with her for the rest of her days. Upon securing the station, we would be able to transfer its control over to Rasputin's systems. With more of Rasputin's submind architecture restored, Anna Bray would begin searching further afield for new sources of Warmind data. She stumbled upon a novel and ingenious source of it, a ghost, specifically the one that had belonged to the Iron Lord Fellwinter. After all, Fellwinter was intimately connected to the Warmind. He had been one of Rasputin's Siddhartha golems, the spies and the eyes and ears that Rasputin had sent out into the population so he might know them. Rasputin's data was contained within Fellwinter, and his ghost contained some of that data as well. We found its remains at the Iron Temple, and returned that data back to the Warmind. Then, something remarkable happened. Fellwinter's memories and personalities were merged with the Warmind, giving it new perspectives, and allowing it to emerge and speak for itself for the first time. It swiftly made contact with us, and told us that Clovis Bray was not to be trusted, that he had deceived us all. Rasputin informed us of what Clovis's original goal for the Warmind was. He told us of how he was meant to strike down the Traveler and to replace it as humanity's war god. All this was meant to be accomplished with a protocol known as Abhorrent Imperative, the same protocol that would allow Rasputin to strike the Traveler with its Warsat network.
Thank you for the follow. I
Rasputin
appreciate
also
it.
informed
I hope
us
you're having a good
that
day.
Clovis Bray planned to merge his systems with that of the newly reborn Warmind, and to use it to gain control over all of Rasputin's Warsat network. With these weapons at his disposal, and being integrated into Rasputin's code, Clovis Bray planned to ascend and become a mechanical god for humanity, the great leader that would shepherd us into the future, the last universal common ancestor of all human progress. Clovis Bray, as per usual, simply wanted to be the one in control. He had always been a madman, self-obsessed from the beginning, and this time, sadly, was no different. Anna and Elsie immediately confronted Clovis with this knowledge, and he quickly was removed from the exo-frame and sent back to his original facility on Europa. In his place, the newly resurgent Warmind would emerge,
Thank you for the follow.
and
I
he would help to
appreciate it.
guide us to what we needed in order to complete
I
the
hope you're having a
rebuild of
wonderful
his
day.
systems.
Thank you.
Not only
I
would
hope you're
this
enjoying
allow
the
him
movie
to
as well.
better unearth the truth of the colony that Osiris had glimpsed in Savathun's mind, but it would bring us one step closer to reactivating the Warmind's defensive capabilities in full. It looked as though we might succeed for a bit, but soon it became evident that even our best laid plans were not going to survive contact with Xivu Arath. Thanks to some clever deductions by Eris Morn and Ido, it was discovered that Xivu Arath was setting a trap for us all. The Warmind's revival was something she had anticipated, and in a spectacular display of her own power, Xivu was pressing us to rebuild the Warmind. And this is why. Hive gods feed off of their ability to create whatever honors them. In Xivu's case, she is honored by war, not simply the act of making war on your enemies, of battling them, but also of the rituals that take place before. the maintenance of machines, the construction of weapons, the building of defenses, the sharpening of swords. By preparing Rasputin and rebuilding a giant machine of war, we were effectively engaging in worship of Xivu Arath. This would all come to a head if the Warsat network was used. They were Rasputin's greatest weapons, and so long as they were used in an act of war, Xivu would be honored. She would gain enough power to open her portals to her throne world above Earth and begin a full-scale invasion. And if it just so happened that Xivu claimed the Warsats for herself, then all the better. They would be turned on the Traveler, and it would possibly be destroyed. If we used our great weapons, we lost, and if we let them fall into the hands of the Hive and the Wrathborn, we would also lose. Rasputin made the final tragic calculation. In order for us to be victorious, we had to refuse to play Xivu Arath's game in the first place. But his final damning conclusion on the course of action we needed to take would take a few weeks to properly calculate. In the meantime, there were other strange rumblings coming from around the system. In particular, Osiris detected an anomaly on Mars. We had learned that the scars and temporal anomalies on Mars were the result of the Witness looking into the past and trying to uncover something. Osiris believed that it too was searching for the hidden colony in Savathun's mind, the secret that she had hidden away, and so he asked us to go and investigate the areas that had been unveiled. In particular, there was one spire, an old facility of Clovis Bray design, one that we had to investigate on Osiris's behalf. When we arrived, we found that the facility was designed to cage an AI, and that it had been activated in the latest stages of the Golden Age by Clovis Bray. Clearly it had been created as part of a system meant to contain Rasputin, but whilst there was an AI contained there, it wasn't a remnant of the Great Warmind. It was Soteria, the AI built by the Ishtar Collective and Clovis Bray during the Golden Age, the AI that had used Vex technology to incredibly accurately predict the future, a future in which it foresaw the arrival of the Black Fleet and had tried to save humanity in the process. It had been contained here for its disobedience and for seemingly going rogue. Soteria was the reason that Rasputin knew about the encroaching forces of darkness, and if she had been left to her own devices, Soteria might have been able to save some of the lives of humanity. But now she was contained here, save for her detached submind that she had sent out into the reaches of space, which had been picked up by the people of Neomuna. Our discoveries on Mars were important. By digging deep into Soteria's prison, the so-called Spire of the Watcher, we were able to uncover yet more proof of the potential for a colony to exist out in the reaches of Neptune. But this knowledge alone would not be enough to stop what was coming next. Our discoveries were important, but Xivu Arath was on the move, and as the Coalition gathered to discuss what was to be done, Rasputin found the solution to Xivu Arath's trap. The only solution was for the Warsats to be destroyed, and for him to perish along with them. This way nobody risked using the Warsats to inadvertently trigger Xivu Arath's trap. Everything was coming to a head now, and perhaps realizing that we weren't taking Xivu's bait, perhaps seeing an opportunity to finally achieve her revenge, Eramis forced our hand. As we prepared on our own terms to destroy the Warmind, the House of Salvation struck out in force and made their way to Seraph Station. Eramis would board the station and would move to activate the abhorrent Imperative Protocol. Had we gained control of the Warsat network, we would have used them as tools against the Witness's forces, but under Eramis's commands, the Warsats began to turn and targeted the Traveler. In a moment that shocked all that looked on, as the abhorrent Imperative Protocol was all but armed, something began to move within the last city. Every Guardian could feel it, like a great cosmic wind rushing toward them from the center of the city. And as they all turned to look, the Traveler moved. The Traveler was leaving, just like it had with every civilization before. It had chosen its moment. The Witness was nearly here. It had decided that now it would abandon humanity and save itself, as it had done countless times before. It entered orbit and was quickly swarmed with warsats, deploying their weapons in preparation to fire. Over the comms, Mithrax pleaded with Eramis not to fire the warsats, trying to speak for the sake of all their people. But Eramis was unswayed, and she would be under the watchful eyes of a darker presence. She had made her choice. She would take her revenge. She activated the warsats, which began to charge, ready to fire. In this moment, when all, for but a brief second, felt like it would be lost, Rasputin and Anna Bray made the brave sacrifice. Rasputin told her that it was time. He had devoted himself to the defense of the people of Sol. He had bravely strode back into the world when it had destroyed him. And now, he would sacrifice himself for the good of us all. It was his choice. Devotion, bravery, sacrifice. He was deactivated. He died. And the Warsat network was purged, decimated before it could fire. And the Traveler, it seemed, was not blind to the tyrant's sacrifice. It halted its retreat, hanging once again within Earth's orbit, standing defiantly against the forces of the Witness. It had seen the sacrifice of humanity's greatest protector. It would make its last stand above Earth once again. In death, Rasputin might have not destroyed the armies of the Witness, but he had undoubtedly saved humanity. He left us with a single message. By decoding his deepest and long-lost memory stores, he had discovered Osiris's lost colony on Neptune. He also discovered what the Witness was looking for on the colony. To us, it was simply an unknown artifact known as the Veil. We wouldn't understand its significance for quite some time, but it was the same artifact that Savathun had hidden away, the same artifact that had been used to create the Witness by the Precursor people, the artifact of darkness that they had tried to link to the Traveler, one of the tools the Witness would use to enact the final shape. We had to make our way to Neptune with all haste, but in the wake of the Warmind's death and the Traveler using this last moment to make a valiant stand, the great machine had been left exposed. The day we had all dreaded was here. The Black Fleet made its final move in earnest. The second collapse was upon us, and the Witness would begin the final stages of the plan set in motion millennia ago. The Witness would rise, and the light would fall. The time of endings had arrived. As the Pyramid fleet made its way to Earth's atmosphere, it was supported by the various ships of Callus's loyalist fleet, his newly titled Shadow Legion. Whilst their vessels fell easily enough, we had no defense against the Black Fleet itself. All the forces of the Coalition rallied to the side of humanity, but we were helpless against the Pyramids. And from the mobile command vessel known as the Helm, all the Coalition's leaders could do was stand back and watch. But in this moment of remarkable tragedy, something stirred within the Traveler. Light. It had detected the Witness's darkness aboard the lead vessel of the Black Fleet, and it struck back with a chaotic beam of pure potential and life. The power of the light made manifest. The Pyramid vessel was sundered and overtaken with wild, luminous growths as a new seed of silver wings was planted in its hull. At the heart of the beam, the Witness had been caught within its full power. But as we would soon realize, it was utterly unaffected and slowly began to approach the Traveler. We tried our best to intercept the Witness as it approached, but it unleashed its terrible powers upon those Guardians that made their way to intercept it. The ships, the Guardians, and their ghosts were atomically sliced apart. They died instantly. The shipwright Amanda Holliday was amongst the attacking squadron, and whilst she wasn't hit by the Witness's powers, the debris from the assault crashed into her vessel, and she was forced to Earth. Humanity's forces and the Traveler itself had proved ineffective against the Witness. The Black Fleet began to surround the Traveler and enclosed it in some kind of containment field, shuttering off its beam of light. At long last, the Witness's grand chase was at an end. It would reach out, and upon reaching a certain proximity to the Traveler, it would receive a vision. It suddenly knew where the Veil was, perceiving it through the connection it had to the Traveler. With all haste, the Witness sent its newest disciple, Emperor Callus, and his Shadow Legion to the location of the Veil, Neptune. Osiris would quickly pursue them, along with us. Now all the hopes of the universe would rest on our shoulders. We didn't understand what the Veil was. We didn't understand why it was important. All we knew was that the Witness was searching for it, and that its plans to end the universe relied upon it. We quickly boarded a Cabal vessel just before it dived into near-light speed travel, and we found ourselves exiting NLS at the edges of the system, in the Outer Giants. We had seen Callus's forces. They were starting to touch down on the surface of Neptune, and we helped at least in some regard. Some of Callus's vessels were vulnerable from within, and so we scuttled what we could before escaping to Neptune's surface in Cabal drop pods. We had to follow the Cabal on a bit of a hope and a prayer. Diving deep into the clouds of a gas giant meant that we shouldn't have been able to land in the first place. But instead of falling endlessly through clouds and being crushed by immeasurable pressure, we emerged into a neon-soaked cityscape. We had discovered Osiris's colony. We had rediscovered the secret human city of Neomuna. Our arrival was quickly noticed by the local protectors, the Cloud Striders, Nimbus and Rohan. 12-foot-tall cybernetically enhanced warriors now stood at our side, and they may have been tasked with defending their own people and their own city, but they weren't about to reject a little help if it was against the enemy that we had in common. Even as the Cabal rained their drop pods down on the city, the actual populace of this place was nowhere to be found. Neomuna's citizens had prepared for war, and all of them had universally retreated into the Cloud Ark, a simulated reality created thanks to the connection that had been forged by the Neomuni technology to the Veil. It was also a great source of power for the city, and it had helped protect them from Vex incursions for the many years since their isolation. But the splendor of Neomuna had also been tainted. A large portion of this city had been crushed by the arrival of Callus's vessel, the Typhon Imperator. With it, the Shadow Legion had arrived in force, accompanied by some of the Witness's own personal forces. They would be known to us later as the Dread. Specifically though, great hulking abominations strode forth alongside Callus's forces. They were the Tormentors, and they would be more than capable of going toe-to-toe with Lightbearers. Osiris's drop pod had landed nearby, and he needed us to help break him out. He did not have his own paracausal abilities of the light anymore after all. He did not have the same strength that he once did, even if his determination was the same as it had always been. But before we freed him, our ghost noticed an unknown source of energy that was paracausal in nature. A mysterious, verdant source of power. It presented itself like threads, and when we reached out, we were overtaken with darkness. But this was not some festering corruption or some malignant thing. It was the energy of potential, of fate, of purpose, of connection. We had found the signature of the darkness that emanated from the veil, a new element at our command. For the first time, we had discovered Strand, a power of the darkness that was very different to what the Witness had shown us with Stasis. We had seen many individuals on both sides of the war use the powers of darkness, but to the best of our knowledge, we were the first to ever wield Strand. Our temporary surge in power allowed us to wipe out a large contingent of Shadow Legion troops, but after some time, we pushed ourselves too far and were momentarily exhausted. We could not climb, and Osiris had to be saved by the Cloudstriders, who easily took care of a Tormentor and several Shadow Legion troops. After we had all regrouped, we headed for the Veil's containment building, but quickly discovered that it had been overrun with Cabal. We also saw the tools that the Witness and Callus had deployed against us. Paracausal disruptors. They were preventing us from using our light and dark powers. Pushing through regardless with force of arms alone, we managed to approach the Overlook to the Veil's containment building, and we saw that it was overrun. There, our ghost was momentarily possessed again, and it appeared momentarily as though we could glean valuable knowledge. We saw a direct communication between Callus and the Witness, whose voice emanated from our ghost. We didn't know why, but their plan was to link a device of some kind, known as the Radial Mast, to the Veil. It was a relay device. As we now understand, linking the Veil and the Traveler was the objective, and so perhaps the Radial Mast was a tool by which the Witness could accomplish this. This device, whatever it might be, could doubtless be found aboard Callus's flagship, the Typhon Imperator, and so our next move was to assault it directly, so we might destroy this device before it could be used. When we reached the deepest chambers of the Typhon Imperator, Callus's forces were waiting for us, and his trap was sprung. The shields around the Radial Mast were utterly impenetrable, and even though we momentarily regained control of Strand, we weren't able to break through. Our light was fading, and were it not for Keitel, who attacked the vessel in force, we would not have escaped. Our new Strand powers that we had developed were of immediate interest to Osiris. He believed that they might in fact be originating from the Veil. It was also of interest to Osiris on a tactical level. It was a force that wasn't accounted for in the plans of Callus or the Witness. Osiris would push us to gain a deeper understanding of this power, and as we assisted the Cloudstriders, it seemed like it was still beyond our control. We learned more and more about it, but every time we pushed ourselves, we would still feel our control eventually slip. Regardless, the use of Strand at all in our arsenal was something that gave us progress. The paracausal disruptors that Callus had deployed didn't account for Strand energy, and they could be destroyed by it. We would be able to use our Strand powers without restraint to destroy the forces of the Witness. Osiris also made various further discoveries about the darkness, uncovering the further truth that unlike the light, which was based in the power of the physical universe, darkness was based in the immaterial, the world of emotions, thought, will, and fate. An important understanding, one that would further what we already knew. The Witness was not truly darkness, it was merely a user of it, and even darkness itself was not truly evil, it was merely a force of the universe, as basic as gravity. Regardless of what lessons might be learnt, our teachings would be cut short. Callus's forces were making their moves, and they were trying to bring the radial mast to the Veil. We had to intervene quickly. If such a link would provide the Witness with victory, no matter what that victory looked like, it had to be stopped. So we set out with the Cloud Striders to stop them. Nimbus was waylaid, so with Rohan at our side, we pushed forward to the Veil containment facility. Our Strand powers were reaching new heights, and we used them to destroy various Cabal commanders and even a few more powerful Tormentors. But when it came time to destroy the radial mast, our powers once again abandoned us and left us unable to fight. The senior Cloud Strider Rohan made the ultimate sacrifice to destroy the radial mast. He bought us the victory that we needed at the price of his own life. But there wasn't time to grieve. This only reinforced to us that we needed to master our new powers, or Rohan's sacrifice would be for nothing. But we discovered that our approach had been all wrong. Unlike stasis, which was the element of control, to master Strand, one must let go and accept one's place as a part of the weave, the web of fate that binds all life together. After understanding this and realizing the truth of this matter, we finally achieved a mastery over Strand, and not a moment too soon. Callus's forces were preparing to once again assault the Veil containment facility and secure it so that the Witness could finally do what it had been planning to do for eons. It would link the Veil to the Traveler, allowing it to enact the final shape, radial mast or not. If the Veil was removed from Neomuna by Callus, it could be brought to the Witness. It would not need a link, it just needed it in its possession. With Empress Keitel and Nimbus by our side, we defended the facility as long as we could, with Keitel deploying her Ascendancy forces to fight at our side. But eventually we were forced to retreat into the Veil containment facility itself. Callus broke through the facility's defenses in a mad rampage, and beneath this object of ancient darkness, we faced off against the Emperor, using the powers of Strand amplified by the Veil itself. And in the end, though his power was great, though he believed that this would be the glorious final battle of our lives, it ended up being the last battle of his. We were victorious. Keitel would soon join us to mourn the man her father had been once again, and as Nimbus also regrouped with us, our ghost proclaimed that they were feeling strange. We received word from Osiris all too late. We had to get our ghost away from the Veil as fast as possible. Once again, it was too late. Our ghost had been possessed by the Witness. To understand what might have happened in this moment is difficult, but I believe this theory may be the correct answer. The ghosts are part of the Traveler, made and forged from the same cosmic flesh as its shell. Within them there is a cosmic link to the Traveler itself. The Witness had needed the radial mast, an object of grand light, in order to link the Veil to the Traveler before. But now it had another object of light. Using our own ghost and possessing it, it would form the link it needed. We couldn't bring ourselves to shoot our ghost down and prevent this moment. We failed, and a stream of cosmic energy erupted from the Veil, flying through the system and striking the Traveler. Our ghost was saved by Nimbus, but it was too late. From the command deck of the helm, the Coalition leaders watched as the Witness enacted the next step of its plan. This moment had been 1,000,000 years in the making. The Witness approached the Traveler unhindered, and with its outstretched hand, began to carve great lines into the traveler's divine flesh. When those lines had joined, the space between folded in on itself. The traveler had been dissected, and a way into its pale heart had been opened. The witness and some of its pyramid vessels ventured into this portal, where at last the witness would be able to enact the final shape for good. Within the heart of the traveler, the energies of the light and the darkness could be merged to allow the witness a measure of ultimate control over the universe. There would be no more life, no more death, only a stagnant limbo where nothing would change, a final shape that would be exactly for the witness alone to command and control. We stood before the portal and beheld our failure. It was over. We had lost. But even with this great defeat, our struggles were not yet done. It would take time for the witness to complete its plans in earnest, and while it worked within the Traveler itself, we would still see its forces rampaging across the system. On Neomuna, we would work with Nimbus to uncover more about the Veil, and confirmed something of our most ancient and original foe, the Heart of the Black Garden. We learned that the Heart of the Black Garden had been a failed copy of the Veil. We also managed to find the lost submind of Soteria, which told us of critically important information. It told us that an enemy of the Witness resided on Titan, and that if we were to save all of existence, we would need to venture there to secure victory. But Titan had not emerged from the Witness's clutches. It had still been abducted, and even many months later, was nowhere to be found. In the meantime, there were other pressing matters to attend to. The citizens of Neomuna were having nightmares. This might seem trivial at first. Nightmares are normally just things of fear. These were different. They all spoke with the same cruel, twisted voice, one that seemed to invite laughter at the demise and dread that it brought. And eventually, we would start hearing this voice too in our waking moments. We would hear it all the more clearly when we held certain relics of Nezarec. We heard his voice deep within the Vex network, and in some quiet places on Neomuna, in its central plazas as they were being attacked. As long as we held something connected to Nezarec's past, the echoes of the final god of pain rang out through our ears. The voice was beckoning us. It was an invitation that would eventually take us to Essence, what remained of the Witness's pyramid ship, the personal vessel that had been attacked by the Traveler's light. The beam of the Traveler had changed this place irrevocably. It had grown into a wild place of light and dark. The roots of a new tree of silver wings had started to grow and to crack the obsidian stone of the vessel's structure. And the roots of this new tree had skewered something of remarkable importance: Nezarec's interred remains. After his dissection by the Fallen, the Witness had salvaged all that remained of the Disciple and had placed him in a state of suspension on board the pyramid vessel. Nezarec was technically dead, but not too dead to dream. Only Nezarec's head had been recovered, and yet, as a tree might grow from a seed, within his containment, Nezarec was beginning to regrow as well. His body was filled not just with the paracausal energies of his original darkness, but with the new, wild growth of the light. His strength was returning, and with one of the roots piercing his containment, whenever the tree grew, so did he. As we ventured through, we had to feed light and darkness to the roots of the tree of silver wings to progress. And as the tree grew, so too did Nezarec. We would hear his heartbeat. It would sound the doom that would approach should he properly return to the world. And at the apex of his power, when he had completely regrown, we would face him. His grotesque new body was an abomination of light and dark. But with his old weapon, Night Terror in hand, he sought to devour our fear and unleash his gluttonous wrath upon this doomed new world. He had returned to reap the pain and suffering that he believed he was owed. But thanks to our own mastery of light and darkness, we were stronger. We struck down the disciple just as we had done to Rolk, just as we had done to Callus. But as his strength faded once again, we heard the last fleeting words of Nezarec, promising that his memory would never fade, and that even in our quietest moments, we would know his voice. It is still unknown if he lives on in some psychic form, but he has come back from the grave once before, right before our own eyes. It is possible that we haven't seen the end of this terrible force just yet. Back on Earth, the Witness's other forces, the Shadow Legion remnants, even after Callus's defeat, were continuing to conduct their Dark Master's purposes. As primitive as it sounds, the Witness would carry out many of its following actions purely for the sake of hatred and for the infliction of pain. It wanted us to experience the same helplessness that its creators had when they were abandoned by the Traveler. The people of Earth were being kidnapped by the forces of the Witness and rounded up into well-defended prison camps. It was here that Mara Sov intervened. She had seen how we had mastered both the light and now a new form of darkness. She had seen that we had ascended, and that all those who stood at our side were worthy. She named us as one of her new Queensguard, members of a great and regal order, and alongside Devrim Kay, Amanda Holliday, Mithrax, and the Crow, we would conduct many daring raids in order to break the people of Earth out of the prisons of the Witness. After raiding multiple prisons successfully, a trap was laid for us. It was meant to destroy us all, but we got a strange warning of sorts from an old foe. Eramis had seen her faith in the Witness shaken. What the Witness had done to her people had challenged her beyond even the Great Machine's betrayal. She would sit and think, and then she would break her allegiance with the Witness. She herself was broken, not in body, but in spirit. She didn't care for vengeance anymore. She had seen it enacted. As she had turned the key to fire the Warsats, she believed she had achieved it, only for defeat to be snatched from the jaws of victory once again. She had made the choice, and even though there were no repercussions, she realized that her heart simply wasn't in it. If the world was going to end, she didn't care anymore. She would eventually leave the system and look for her long-lost mate Arthris, but before she could find her, she warned us of the trap that was being laid before us and tried to steer us clear. But she had always been our enemy, and so we ignored her warnings. Whilst many of us would escape, it was Amanda Holliday that would pay the price for our refusal to listen. Eramis was able to save Mithrax from being enveloped in an explosion, evening the score for the time he had showed her mercy when hunting down Nezarec's relics. But Amanda was now dead. Gone. She had given her last full measure so that the people who were trapped could escape. Her death shook us all. Crow was distraught. Despite his past life, they had become friends, and though the relationship they had developed was complicated by what Aldrin had done to Cade, Amanda was still of the understanding that he was a different person at very least, even if emotionally speaking, she was having a lot of trouble connecting with him. But it was Zavala who was most affected. He had watched the Traveler give the light to the Hive. He had watched it nearly abandon the people of Earth. He had watched it do nothing as the people he loved and cared for died. From his adopted son, to his wife, to the woman he'd come to know first like a daughter, and then as one of his oldest friends. Zavala's faith broke. He cursed the Traveler with his words, If it would not lift a finger to save his people, then he would become like Atlas once again. He would shoulder the burden of the coming war for the survival of all life in the universe. The war that would begin its next phase beneath the methane seas of Titan, and with the words of a long-lost Leviathan, who would at last be roused from the deep. Before we made our way to Titan, before it had even been returned to us, we attempted the most obvious course of action. A portal, an entrance into the side of the Traveler, had been carved by the Witness. We had to see if we could follow. We sent an exploratory ship to follow in the Witness's wake. The Guardian aboard, Joxer, was found in what was left of the ship's wreckage. He had been cosmically shifted. He had been phased into the hull of the vessel before it had been spat out of the portal, as though he had been moved and reassembled on a quantum level, fused into the vessel. We would need to find a way to guarantee our safe passage. Entering the portal in this state was a fool's gambit, doomed to failure. But luckily for us, our first clue would present itself in due time. Titan re-emerged from the dimension the Witness had abducted it to, and immediately we started receiving an emergency distress signal from an all-too-familiar voice, Deputy Commander Sloane. She was alive. She had survived all these years in isolation, and she was now calling for help. Zavala immediately sent a contingent of Titan forces, including Saint 14 and Lord Saladin, to find her. We were also deployed to the recovery force, and the Drifter would also decide to tag along, supposedly more out of mere curiosity than anything else, though by this point his involvement in our plans was realistically of his own volition. He knew that Zavala would grow reckless, and so the Drifter endeavored to use his years of adventuring expertise to temper Zavala's ambition with a little practical wisdom. As we touched down on Titan, it was clear that something wasn't right. A remnant force of Hive appeared to still be on the Arcology. That wasn't so unusual. But as it turned out, these forces belonged to the Hive God of War, Xivu Arath. After our initial assaults began, we were greeted by a terrifying sound the likes of which we had not heard until that day. Xivu's voice echoed through our minds, amplifying the ferocity of her forces, weakening our resolve. She enraged and taunted Saint for his failure to prevent Sagira's death, for not being there to be at his partner's side and defend him from her High Celebrant. His rage was palpable, but other than breaking the advancing Hive on his gauntlet and faceplate, there was little he could do. When we stopped Xivu's rituals and interference, we noticed that the signal of Sloane's distress call was coming not from somewhere on the Arcology platforms, but instead from deep beneath the waves. Zavala immediately tried to get us to jump into the ocean in the most direct of fashions, but the Drifter had a better idea. He transported us to his ship, knowing that we didn't have the necessary equipment to survive the crushing pressure of Titan's oceans. When we were properly outfitted, we headed down through the methane seas and found our way to a subterranean dive tank, a research center from the Golden Age. There, we found Sloane and saw that she had been infused with Taken corruption. Her mind was still her own, but the corruption would allow her to tune into the orders being given by Xivu Arath. It was not something she had gained of her own volition. It was an affliction. She could still hear the whispers of Xivu in her mind, and the stress of her long campaign was clear from the start. Sloane was strong, stronger than perhaps 1,000 other Titans, but the burden she had chosen to bear was utterly monumental, greater than any other Guardian's burden in that time. It is hard to resist the strength of a god, let alone Xivu Arath, when one stands alone. But luckily for Sloane, in her years of isolation on Titan, she might have been the only guardian, but she wasn't truly alone. Along with her ghost, she had made another ally. From behind the viewport of the dive pod, a giant creature swam into view, placing its eye directly up to the porthole for all to gaze upon it. Sloane had found a survivor of a primordial species, the last of the original worm gods, the worms that had not been corrupted by the Witness, but had instead been whales of the great oceans of Fundament. She had found the one who had escaped the Witness's corruption and now sought its downfall just as we did. This was the legendary Leviathan of Titan, the monster behind the glass, as Drifter would call them, the long boy in the soup. And her name was Arsa. Sloane had been saved from Xivu's clutches by the great Leviathan, and it had promised her assistance in the fight ahead. Assistance that included Arsa's intimate knowledge of the Witness's origins. In order to access this information, though, the link that Arsa had forged between her own mind and the mind of Deputy Commander Sloane would need to be reinforced. To do this, we would use some of the tools of the Witness against it. Egregore. The fungus that we had found aboard the Leviathan had also infested Titan's seas, growing as a sort of coral in the deepest reaches of the seabed. Egregore spores open one's mind to darkness and allow psychic connections that would otherwise snap under the weight of one's waking mind. Arsa and Sloane could use this coral to strengthen their connection and allow a communion of sorts. After enough infusions of it, Arsa was able to fully communicate to us through Sloane. She told us of the Witness's origins, of how the Precursor people had once also enjoyed the Traveler's bounty, of how they had sought to merge it with the Veil to create the final shape, and of how the Traveler had rejected the synthesis and had fled. It was also here that we learned of the terrible cost that the Precursors paid to create the Witness, merging their minds into a single compound being using the powers of darkness that they had learned from the Veil. This was how the Witness was born, and Arsa promised that soon she would be able to tell us of one who knew how to defeat it. But Titan's return to the system was cause for much more than our own discoveries. The Lucent Brood were on the move again, and shortly after Titan's return, a massive Lucent Hive vessel crashed down into the methane seas and sank beneath the waves. This was no accident. This was deliberate. It had been sunken to a specific point near the bottom of the ocean near the new Pacific Arcology. But the Lucent Hive had worked to secure the platform above with a small army. The Hive up top were enacting a ritual to try and cloak the entrance to the Arcology's drilling platform, the one area that we might use to access the seabed and enter the vessel for ourselves. And so Sloane sent us to investigate and stop the Hive ritual. We put an end to this ritual of concealment, but it was clear that the objective that the Lucent Hive had crashed their ship for was down on the bottom of the seabed. And so, accessing the drilling platform, we dove into darkness. The only viable method of reaching the bottom of the seafloor was to follow the Arcology down. And so we did, marching on the dark seafloor of Titan to reach the crashed vessel. The Lucent Hive here were risen from various broods. Most notably of all, though, were those of the Taken King Oryx and his banished son, Nokris. Something nefarious was taking place here. After we defeated the newly risen Ekthar, the Sword of Oryx, now Shield of Savathun, we headed deeper into the lowest reaches of the ship, where we met the seabed. And there we saw the objective of the Lucent Hive. It was a body, gargantuan in size, with an all too familiar face, one that had once spelled doom for the system. It was Oryx, His body had been pulled from its low orbit of Saturn into the gravitational anomaly when Titan was abducted. It had then plummeted into Titan's atmosphere and fallen into the seas. It rested now on the seafloor, and the Lucent Hive had discovered the king's remains. Their plan was not simple, but if it worked, it would truly change the nature of the system forever. Using a mixture of the light and Nokris's powers of necromancy taught to Savathun's brood, the Lucent Hive there were attempting to raise one of the most powerful and ancient foes that humanity had ever known as a Lucent Hive. A light-bearer with Oryx's power would be nearly unstoppable. A taken king reborn in the lucent sheen of the light would be a force beyond reckoning. The danger was evident, immediate, and apparent. Without little thought or hesitation, we crushed the ghost that was being used in this ritual and engaged the Lucent Hive wizard at the ritual's heart. In her former life, this wizard had been one of Nokris's high necromancers. Maybe it was her plan. Maybe it was something she had found from her old life, a talent that persisted beyond death. But it would not be put to use. We managed to stop the ritual just in time, but this made us once again pay attention to the hive of Savathun's brood. They could not be trusted to conduct themselves without engaging in plans that could sow disaster for us. Even as the doom of the world approached, they were making their own schemes, and such things could uproot what remained of the structure of the universe to their advantage.
Hello, Mime.
We
This
would need
is
to keep a closer eye on them in the future.
This is one of the Destiny Lords that
As
came
we
out
were preparing,
by Mr. Bife. My name is Bife. He made this. It's really, really good. I started it yesterday. I'm finishing it today.
to commune with Asa one last time, Zivor Arath struck again. She had abducted Asa, and her wizards had dragged her into the deep. There, in a dark ritual chamber, deeper than any other that we had ventured to, we would need to find Asa before the ritual of the hive was complete. When we arrived, we realized what the plan of Zivor Arath was. Given enough time and given no distractions, the wizards of Zivor Arath's coven would take Asa. And if they succeeded, our one chance, the one person who could give us information necessary to defeat the witness, would be lost to us. We descended into the ritual, butchered Zivor Arath's wizards, and brought Asa back, just in time. As we returned her to the dive tank, Sloane's burden of corruption momentarily overpowered her, and she spoke with the voice of the Hive God of War. Zivor Arath chastised Sloane for her weakness before the strength of the God of War, proclaiming that without war, Sloane was nothing. Sloane even put her blade to Commander Zavala's throat in that moment, and would have killed him. But Zavala was of sound mind and calm voice. His direction centered Sloane again. He spoke with the conviction not of a commander, but of a friend, and with the power to rouse Sloane from her corruption.
Yes, it's very fun.
She wasn't alone. She had always had her friends
I've been
by
watching
her
this
side.
video. I watched the whole
Ziva's
thing.
corruption faded,
It's
and an
awesome.
entirely different voice emerged from Sloane's mouth. She spoke once more with Asa's voice. She was freed. Asa conveyed through Sloane her most vital truth, that the one who hides truth in deception knew the way. In order to follow the witness into the Traveler, we would need to resurrect Savathun once more. The Witch Queen had to be returned for our path forward to be carved. She would rise again, or all life in the universe would be forfeit. The mere suggestion of this enraged Saladin and Saint 14. They had both fought long and hard against the influence of this evil. Saint in particular was furious given what Savathun had done to Osiris. But we had no choice. To prevent the end of all things, we would need to resurrect Savathun. The Hidden still held custody of her remains in a secure vault. They had been studied by Eris Morn, and they were mostly inert.
I hope you've been having a
But
good time
it
as
could
well,
be
man.
resurrected
I
at
know it's
any
been a while since we
time.
talked, but I hope you're doing
All
good.
they needed was Imaru, her ghost. He would be the next one to lead us on our path forward, and a dark path indeed it would be. Savathun has always been cunning, and she knew that she might die at our hands one day. She had prepared contingencies just in case such an event might happen, and had left those contingencies in the capable hands of her ghost, Imaru. After we discovered his important role in all this, he would reach out to us voluntarily, as his instructions from his master dictated. He would resurrect the Witch Queen, but on one condition. We had to deal with Xivu Arath, the Hive God of War. Destroying a Hive God is no small feat, and we had barely any time in which to do it. We could not so easily locate Xivu's throne world of the Black Terrace, and so dealing a final death to Xivu would be next to impossible. We would need to fight the power of one Hive God with a Hive God of our own. There were perhaps only 2 people who knew the rituals of the Hive with intimacy enough to conduct such an affair. The uncooperative and partly deceased warlock Toland the Shattered, and the newly rising witch, Eris Morn, the last, bane of the Osmium dynasty. Using Hive rituals and dark magics, Eris would enact the most terrifying ritual imaginable. Within a revealed secret spire in Savathun's throne world, and with green soulfire in her heart and Hive scripture in her throat, Eris began to ascend. With ourselves, Imaru and Ikora standing as witnesses to the event, we saw as she invoked the names of those who desired vengeance against Xivu Arath and the Osmium dynasty. She mantled vengeance, and vengeance became her blade. She was lifted into the air before us, and began to change. Her form twisted, spines growing from her back, claws elongating from fingers. The ritual grew in intensity until it was a raging firestorm of green flame. And then it was over. Now Eris Morn stood before us, ascended into the Hive God of Vengeance. She was transformed, and she was now our only hope of defeating Xivu Arath. Her first words after this apotheosis would define our mission. Bring me your tithes. And so we did. Eris Morn had created an Acolyte's staff for us to use. It allowed us to use the destruction that we had become so adept at creating to tithe power to Eris Morn just like any other Hive would to one of their own gods, though the staff was designed to prevent us from having to partake in the Hive's own blood tithe, which eternally bound them to the path of violence. Using our own powers and offering them up as tithes, we would be able to empower Eris, and if she grew powerful enough, she would be able to take on the Hive God of War. But the task ahead of us was utterly monumental and fraught with danger. Xivu was the conqueror of 1,000 worlds, and her might was near insurmountable already. We would need to collect as many countless tributes of violence for Eris as we could muster, and all the while, she would be subject to an unending barrage of scrutiny. The tower had been slowly pushed further and further with Eris's magic, and every time it had proved its usefulness, but every time the boundaries were pushed further still. This would be a step too far for many. Ikora would shield Eris from the scrutiny of the tower where she could, even as she fostered some of her own doubts. but many others looked upon Eris's choices with fear and frustration in equal measure. None more so than Elsie Bray, the Exo-Stranger, who had experienced many a dark future where Eris Morn had ascended to rule the Hive, a moment that had brought ruin and calamity to all of Sol and the Guardians of the Light. As we continued to explore Savathun's spire at the heart of her throne world, Xivu's forces would make a move of their own. Pushing in and invading Savathun's throne world, Xivu would delight in Eris's transformation. She believed that she was now embodying the soul and spirit of Oryx the Taken King. In being the one who wielded his slayers, she had embraced the mantle of a Hive god. She might easily take his place as first navigator in time. At very bare minimum, she would stand alongside her as yet a new sister. Oryx's purpose reincarnated, Xivu was hopeful that Eris Morn might simply embrace the power of the Hive. But Eris's resolve was greater than even Xivu had realized, a mistake that would be her downfall in the end. After many preparations had been made, we would eventually manage further explorations into Savathun's throne world. We discovered that below the highest reaches of Savathun's spire, but above the low oubliette in which the altars of summoning were located, there was a secret chamber within the spire. This hidden chamber was known as the Imbaru Engine. Imbaru is a dangerous and unique concept that was effectively created and weaponized by Savathun. She is a Hive god of deception, and she gains power wherever lies and ignorance take root. Imbaru is essentially the empowering of Savathun by one's own ignorance. An entire engine built around such a concept was designed as a puzzle, one meant to confound and confuse. It would slowly unlock over time, inviting us into its inner reaches to delve into deeper secrets still. But the mysteries of the Imbaru engine would have to wait. Xivu's forces were being massed, and it was clear that there would be a final confrontation with us soon. Imbaru believed the situation had turned hopeless and was on the cusp of fleeing, but he was forced to remain even when he knew that Eris had not collected enough violent tithes to challenge Xivu Arath. But Ikora and Eris had a plan, a bold gambit. They would get only one chance, and if it failed, all of creation was being held in the balance. After we defeated one of Xivu's great champions and conducted one last tithe to Eris, Ikora entered the ritual space in the Altars of Summoning and had Savathun's body ported in. Imbaru was instructed that despite the terms of our agreement having not been completed, this was his last chance to resurrect his guardian, and so begrudgingly, he did so. And life was breathed back into the Witch Queen. Savathun returned to us from the dead, and immediately made an about turn to approach Eris Morn. Eris would only utter 4 words in response to the Witch Queen's musings on her new form. "I am your ruin." And with blinding speed, Eris took her blade in her hand and cut the Witch Queen's throat. This had been a true death of one of the Hive gods in their own throne world. More importantly, unlike when we had slain Savathun, Eris was able to claim her power as a god of the Hive. The power that Eris claimed by killing Savathun, in combination with the tithes of the Guardians, had momentarily left Eris Morn as the most powerful Hive god in existence. The Taken King and First Navigator, the god of lies and deception, the god of war. All of them were nothing before Eris Morn, the Unbroken Blade, the god of vengeance. And Eris turned her wrath on the god of war. She had all the might in the universe at her fingertips. Everything that the Hive had ever done, everything that they could ever be, was hers to command. If Eris had desired, she could have gone on from this moment to conquer all of the city, to rule the Hive and to become their dark master. But in their frail sword logic, she saw the weakness of the Hive. Tempting as the very nature of godhood itself might be, Eris's conviction was stronger. She did not succumb to corruption. Instead, she made a choice that would define the nature of Xivu's existence forever. To kill Xivu would have been following the Hive's own way, and would ensure that she stayed a god forever. The transformations had been momentary, brief as she absorbed the power within the oubliette every time the Guardians made a tithe. But if she killed Xivu, she would be transformed permanently. But she had made a solemn vow to Ikora and to the Drifter that she planned to be with them. And even in the face of godhood, this vow stayed true. So Eris summoned her power, and instead of using it as the sword logic might demand to kill, she used it to banish Xivu Arath from her own throne world. This action took all of her power, and she would not be able to hold onto it because her actions were not in keeping with the sword logic. Eris was reverted to her mortal human form and fell to the ground. But in the moment that she had collapsed, Xivu's wails of grief could be heard across the Ascendant Plane. Eris had rejected the notion that she was Oryx, born again. She had shown the Hive God of War exactly why she was the bane of the Osmium dynasty. Xivu Arath had had her strength shattered. She would never again be able to return to her throne world. She was banished from it. She was now mortal. Her next death would be her last. Savathun was quickly raised once again by Imaru, and seeing us standing by Eris and Ikora, she quickly realized that there was a real chance that she would be defeated again if fighting began to break out between them. And so, she agreed to a temporary armistice of sorts. She left Imaru with us as collateral. But the entire reason for us resurrecting the Witch Queen was so that she could tell us of how to pursue the Witness, and Savathun had given us no clues about what this method was. When we inquired, she said that the way would reveal itself soon. And so it did. When we delved deeper into the Imbaru engine, we unlocked the deepest final chamber. Within it, there was the greatest curiosity of all, and the answer to our questions. An egg. The egg of an Ahamkara, a wish dragon. This was one of Riven's clutch. It was much unlike the eggs ruined by Taken corruption in the Dreaming City. There was still life within this egg. It was the hint we needed to continue our investigation. We realized that we were going to need to use wish magic and an Ahamkara in order to pass through and follow the Witness. But what's more, we remembered back to the moment of Savathun's resurrection and deduced that there was a pattern in her wings. But this wasn't just any pattern. This was a wish. Something meant to be put specifically to one dragon above all others, Riven of 1,000 Voices. This was a unique code to be inputted on the device known as the Wishing Wall that Mara had constructed to more specifically bargain with Riven without adverse consequences. And finally, it was revealed what this wish was: a wish to follow the Witness, the fabled and lost 15th wish. Savathun had made it, and Savathun had hidden it away all along. This would be our deliverance. Suddenly our path was clear. The only way for us to follow the Witness into the Traveler's Pale Heart was using the wish magic of an Ahamkara, and there was perhaps only one of the dead dragons that still had the power to grant a wish of this magnitude. A dragon that had had dealings with Savathun before. Riven. Riven of 1,000 Voices, the last known Ahamkara, ensnarer of the Forsaken Prince, damning perpetrator of the curse on the Dreaming City, and Mara Sov's greatest secret. In order to enter the heart of the Traveler, we would need to bargain with Riven, even though we had been her murderers, but we clearly had no choice, and so we returned once again to the Dreaming City to face the old monster that we had slain so long ago in the name of avenging our fallen friend, Cayde Six. The final act of our story was about to unfold. Ahamkara are strange beings indeed. They can be killed, but even in death, they are able to manifest their powers of wish magic. From something as small as a shard of bone, one can make a wish that will spell disaster or change fate irrevocably. Seeing Riven's clutch, knowing that her remains still lay in the Dreaming City, and knowing that the Techeuns had secured her heart, we knew where we had to go next. After hearing the news of our plan, the awoken Corsairs mobilized with all haste. It was perhaps not surprising that if we were going to deal with Riven, we would need to use the Wishing Wall. Mara had constructed it long ago to deal with Riven in a more controlled manner. But even in death, the Wishing Wall still held power, and Riven would be able to grant wishes to those who used it properly. This was how we would input the 15th wish. And even though Riven was dead, she would still be able to grant one last wish. That being said, we would need some of her remains to power the process properly, and so we descended upon the Queen's Walk where we had killed Riven years earlier. Despite the interception of the Vex of the Sol Divisive, we managed to secure one of Riven's teeth, and taking this to the Wishing Wall, we were able to invoke the power of the long-dead dragon. Rumors had long swirled of the long-lost 15th wish that we would cherish, but it had not been found. Until now. But when we approached in order to make this wish upon the Wishing Wall, Riven refused to grant it. Mara and Riven would have stern words. The two great beings of power spoke once more, with her Techeuns focusing Riven's spirit within the heart that they had contained. Thus, a great manifestation of Riven's spirit, as large as her original size, appeared before Mara and spoke with the Queen of the Reef. They bargained once again as they had done when they created the Dreaming City, but this time all of creation was up in the balance. As a price of granting Savathun's wish, Riven demanded that we gathered her remaining eggs and gave them a chance at life. This would mean the return of a species that the Guardians had put to the torch and driven to extinction. It would mean the return of the Ahamkara and their potentially dangerous wish magic to the system and beyond. It would change everything in ways unforeseen. But the alternative was oblivion. We had no choice, and so we accepted Riven's bargain. Riven had hidden the remnants of her clutch within her lair, a space within the Ascendant Realm and the ley lines that was also attached to the Dreaming City, one we would have to enter via the Dreaming City's portals. But something had happened. When we arrived at the heart of Riven's lair, it turned out that her eggs of this clutch had been scattered across the ley lines. All 7 of them were missing. But it wasn't the Witness or Mara Sov who had done this. There was another force at play here. We would discover who it was when we pursued the Vex of the Sol Divisive. They had stolen one of Riven's eggs and managed to transport it into their own domain, the Black Garden. As we approached the egg's location, it was clear that Riven had been here long before. Paracausal echoes of where she had been left. But strangely enough, there were different echoes there as well. Echoes from another wish dragon. As we approached the site, we found the egg unharmed. And it was next to something that maybe one of us did expect. Riven perhaps hoped against all hope, but lying there next to the egg were the remains of another Ahamkara, one that she had known well. The bones reached out to Crow and petitioned him. They wished to use him to give voice to their words, and he obliged. Thus we heard the words of the Ahamkara known as Taranis, Riven's mate. He had been the one to scatter the eggs, but he was not an aggressor. He was actually their savior. He had kept himself hidden in the Black Garden where his lair was located, long after he and Riven had made their clutch. They had both managed to survive and were communicating still, quietly whispering in the spaces between realities. But when Riven was taken by Oryx, Taranis knew that their clutch was in danger of falling to corruption. They too might be lost, and the future of their entire species was in jeopardy. Out of love for Riven and for their unborn children, Taranis did the one thing that no Ahamkara must do. He fed on his own desire and granted his own wish, a wish to keep his and Riven's clutch safe until a wish keeper could come along to reunite the clutch. We would be that wish keeper, but the death of Taranis would be the price of this wish. Ahamkara must never grant their own wishes because it forces their desires to feed upon their own existence. By granting his own wish, Taranis forfeit his own life. But then again, he was most unlike other Ahamkara. Unlike his brethren, he did not twist the wishes of his petitioners. His way was a different way that the Ahamkara could use to exist, and his lessons for Riven and their children would hopefully echo into the future. His kind-hearted nature was a novelty amongst his kin, but it didn't have to be so. Future generations, if properly stewarded by Mara Sov and the Awoken, could learn to follow Taranis' way instead. As we progressed to discover more of Riven's eggs, she would come forward to us with an admission of truth. Her bargain with Savathun, the 15th wish, would only transport a single person into the Pale Heart. If we were to take this wish and go as that singular person, we would have to face the witness alone. In the face of this new realization, there were many difficult decisions to be had, but it was Crow who would ultimately rise to the occasion. He and Mara still shared their cosmic link, even though he had died and been reborn as a guardian. That link connected them even if one of them stepped into another dimension. Crow realized that he could step into the Pale Heart of the Traveler, and Mara would still be able to find him. Using their link and the entangled properties of the Veil and the Traveler, Crow and Mara's link would be able to be used by Osiris, who would coordinate it with the signal of the Veil and the Traveler, thus creating a safe passage into the Pale Heart that the rest of us would follow. However, Crow would have to go first. Mara didn't initially approve of the idea, but she also knew that a part of her relationship with her reborn brother could only be mended if she allowed her sibling the freedom to choose his own path and to be the arbiter of his own fate. And so Mara did the most difficult thing she had ever been asked to do. She relinquished her control and agreed to Crow's plan. When we located Riven's final egg, it was initially stolen away by the Scorn. However, these Scorn were not under the control of the Witness. Instead, they had flown under the banner of an old and eternal foe, Fikrul, the Fanatic. He had directed his Scorn to acquire the egg, and with their own uncontrolled desires, the Scorn might have fed the young Ahamkara if they weren't careful, leading to potential disaster. But Fikrul's forces were no match for us, and we recovered this final egg, though Fikrul's presence would be a dire omen for the future. At last, Riven agreed and decided to grant the 15th wish. It would consume the rest of her energy, meaning she would no longer be able to manifest as a spirit. This was perhaps the last time she would commune with us, but she was ready for what came next, and the future of her brood had been secured. So she granted the 15th wish and summoned forth a passageway into the heart of the traveler. Crow passed through, and Mara could sense that he was indeed on his way. Riven, having played her part, folded back into the whispered edges of reality, her work now complete, and her true last wish having been granted at last. It would take Crow months to pass into the Pale Heart, and it would take Osiris months to prepare the veil for the connection, but we would spend our time wisely. Guardians rearmed and prepared to venture into the Pale Heart in force. Venturing into the light like this would require new arms, and so Lord Shaxx released an arsenal of new tools for us to make use of. Old weapons as well, from our distant past that had at one point been terrors within his own crucible. The Guardians held the forces of the Witness at bay as their onslaught flooded across Earth in unending waves, and we gathered as much power to ourselves as we could, until at last, the day had come. Osiris made contact with us, telling us that there was interference between the signal of the Veil and the Traveler. Perhaps this was one final attempt by the forces of the Witness to prevent Crow from accessing the Pale Heart. The source of the interference originated from an all-too-familiar place, the Black Garden. Clearly our oldest foes, the Vex of the Sol Divisive, were up to their old games. Using Riven's secret pathway from the Dreaming City into the Black Garden, we stormed the Sol Divisive's territory, and found ourselves looking once more upon a familiar sight. A circular doorway, opening in segments, revealing a monstrous thing festering once more. The Sol Divisive had created another heart of the Black Garden, another flawed copy of the Veil. This had been done with the assistance of the Witness, and its purpose was now clear once again. If left to their own devices, the Vex might have been able to use this heart to supersede the Veil's signal and lock us out of the Pale Heart of the Traveler for good. But for all their predictive power, these Vex did not foresee that we would return to the site of our first conquest 10 years later. And where before we had conquered the Pale Heart as a novice, now we returned as a Godslayer. The Sol Divisive were defeated, and once again, the heart was banished. The pathway to the Veil was complete. As the interference died down, at long last, Crow was ejected on the other side of the portal and fell into the strange land of the Traveler's Pale Heart. Almost immediately upon landing, he started taking fire, a stranger on the ridge. But it turned out this stranger bore an all-too-familiar face. Whether because of wish magic or the light of the Traveler or some other strange circumstance, Crow found himself flat on his back, facing an all-too-familiar gunslinger holding the Ace of Spades. Cayde Six. If it wasn't for Glint's quick appearance and the realization that Crow wasn't Aldrin, Cayde might have ended him there. But they were quick to realize the truth, and stood side by side before the festering evil that the Witness was creating in the Pale Heart. An evil that was almost ready to fulfill its purpose. For now, the time of endings is upon us. Whether the sun rises again on a world free of the Witness, or whether it sets eternally and rests in its part of the final shape, know this: of the many thousands of lessons taught to us over these last 10 years, lessons hard-earned through victory and failure, there is one that has stood the test of time like no other, and it is simply this: Guardians make their own fate. When you step into the Pale Heart of the Traveler and confront the Witness, remember, you are the arbiter of your own future, and by no will but your own can you be deterred. You are no mere instrument of the light. You are no mere tool of the dark. You have transcended your purpose and become something more. You are the one who moves time forward. You are the architect of the future. You are the reason for victory on the horizon. And so go forth, and do as a guardian does, for you are no mere protector. You are the wild growth of the garden's heart. You are the battle that makes waves eternal. You are the prime mover of your own prophecies. Because you are destiny.
Oh shit. That was fucking cool, man. Holy crap. This has been one of the, man, that was one of the best videos I ever watched. I will not lie. Holy shit. I'm so excited for Destiny released here in just a few hours. Oh, it's going to be so much fun. It is going to be so much fun. I haven't practiced this in a minute, so some fun. Oops.
The world of sound is governed by exact numbers. Exact numbers. Exact numbers.
Whoops. Yeah. Yeah, this one's well. Damn. Damn. Oh, come on. Damn it. I thought it was dead. It's hard to get the timing down with this. Oh wait, I can just go through those? That's fun. Oops. I don't understand. Oh. Much better than last time. That was good. That was good. Yeah, I shite. Oh, come on.
The world of sound is governed by exact numbers.
Oh, come on.
Exact numbers. Exact numbers. We live in a special kind of space.
I. What? I don't know why this part's so hard for me, but it is. Oh, okay, so it's just click, 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 click. I figured that out. Okay, cool, cool, cool. I keep jumping again. It's just click, 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 click. Oops. That is an improvement. Much better improvement. Okay. Love to see that, dude. Went from 100 to 45. That's pretty fucking good, man. Oops. Oh. Oops.
The world of sound is governed by exact numbers.
I keep clicking there out of like habit now, which is not good.
Exact numbers.
Oops.
We live in a special kind of space.
Damn it. What? There we go. Oh, come on. That was so stupid. Well, come on. I don't know what just happened there.
The world of sound is governed by exact numbers.
God,
Exact numbers.
keep doing that out of habit.
Exact numbers.
What? What? Why is it doing that? Stop.
We live
Thank you. Alright, quick. There we go. Oh. I wasn't expecting to die there. It's decreasing ever so slowly. Oh, no, shot, I die there. Oh, come on. I'm at 30. I swear I die to the dumbest shit sometimes. Oh, why did I click, bro? Don't click during that. Oh, okay. Okay, brother. What's up, brother? Type shit. Like what? Well, oh shit. That's the fun one. It's very annoying though sometimes. Let's see. Oh, an NCS one. Some NCS songs. I forgot they added that into this. I'll worry about that later. Trickling cliffside again. It's like, alright, Space Factory, yay. Fun, fun, fun. Oof. Undo it. How do I die to that? Like, what? I never died there. There I died. I'm just kidding, I never died there either. I just suck. Oh, come on. I let go. I didn't mean to. I get it. Alright, bloodbath it is. Hold on, something seems off. Oh. Holy shit, that's 11! Oh, 11 on Bloodbath. Holy fuck, I made 11. Holy shit. That's super exciting. Okay, I don't even care. That's 11% on Bloodbath. I'll fucking take it. I'll fucking take it.
Face made of blood, a heart full of bugs. All born to die, and the world is a fuck. Mark of Cain in the rain's gone. Looking the sin that's glued to her gums.
I jumped too early. Sadness.
Face made of blood, a heart full of bugs. All born to die, and the world is a fuck. Mark of Cain in the rain's gone. Looking the sin that's glued to her gums. Touch. Throw corroded, then you disturb it, just broken code, screams hopeless, homeless, vomiting over bathtubs. Never felt so numb, abuse through the moon's mouth, you say God.
Oh.
Face made of blood, a heart full of bugs, all born to die, and the world is a fuck. Mark of Cain in the rain's gone, looking the sin that's glued to her gums. Touch. Throw corroded, then you disturb it, just broken code, screams hopeless, homeless, vomiting over bathtubs. Never felt so numb, abuse through the moon's mouth, you say God. Life is
Oh, hey, let's go. Whoops.
face made of blood, a heart full of bugs, all born to die, and the world is a fuck. Mark of Cain in the rain's gone, looking the sin that's glued to her gums. Touch. Throw corroded, then you disturb it, just broken code, screams hopeless, homeless, vomiting over bathtubs. Never felt so numb, abuse through the moon's mouth.
Ah, see that part. Arg. That's fun though. I like that. Ah, man. I'm doing pretty good today. Today's a good day. It's oh, dude, I'm so excited. I can't wait. I'm so excited for Destiny 2. Oh, come on. Ah, I lost my rhythm bit by fucking it up. Oh well. Not quintuple mode.
Okay, girls, let's count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Shit. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8.
Oh, scheisse.
Okay, go.
Yeah, I remember this one. I should actually practice it. I should practice it. That's what I should do. This is a fun one.
Okay, girls, let's count to 10. 1, 2,
Aye.
6, 6, 8.
Well, this is getting interesting.
Shit.
Swagger out.
2, 2, 3, 4, 4.
Oh wait, am I supposed to sit in that gap? Yeah, I am supposed to get in that gap. But that's so hard. I'm confused. No, I wasn't. Alright.
5, 6, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3.
What is happening?
You're very close. Let's try one more time.
1, 2.
That's an insane level. Literally. Fun, though, nonetheless. This one's the other one. Yeah. Mm-mm. Whoops. What? That's so awkward. Oh, what? It didn't go up. I can't see it. I can't see where I'm supposed to go. I can't see that. I can't see the arrows, like, at all. It's so stupid. Whoops. I don't know why I'm not clicking there. Look at me. Yeah, I remember this one. I'm good. You can't see shit. I don't know how you're supposed to get past that. Like, I got lucky apparently when I was practicing, but Jesus Christ, you know? Gross. What was that? What am I supposed to do after that? Like, how? I'm confused. Okay. Screw it. Let's play Mr. Crazy Hands. This one's a really fun, long one, but it's still fun nonetheless.
Wake up to go to sleep. Wake up to go to sleep. So the stakes.
Okay, dude.
Wake up to go to sleep. So the stakes can tread on me. Can't trust what you don't see. Malware, halo, fate is deep. Blood wedged with the hemlock lips. Loveless with the render seam ribs.
I knew it.
Wake up to go to sleep.
Saw it.
Wake up to go to sleep.
Oh, come on, I clicked, you fuck!
Wake up to go to sleep. So the stakes can tread on me. Can't trust what you don't see.
Ah! Making me mad. Oh my goodness. Today's gonna be a good day though. I'm not going to let anything fuck with me, yeah? Okay. I didn't jump. I'm pretty sure I didn't think this was an XL level.
Okay, that's out no.
I threw my own self off. Like, what?
Okay,
Something
that's out
sounds
no.
wrong. So many people texting, Jesus. Once that update gets pushed out, man, this is just gonna go crazy. For some reason something's not sounding right. Also, no one's here, right? For some reason the live scene just looks weird. Hmm. I wonder if they can see this. It doesn't look like it. Oh, yep. We hear it. Oh, okay, there we go.
Dance up, no.
Why? Why, game? Why do you hate me so? See, I wish I had. Interesting. Okay, okay. Cool. So it does show it, at least, which is nice. It's not following it. See, that just captures the whole screen, which is good, but it's not what I want. And now for some reason it's not showing it. Oh hey, I'm flying. Okay. There we go. Oh, come on. Arg. Me matey. Alright, future fun. Why not? This one's fun. Wow, I'm doing really bad right now. Hold on. Too low. I'm reminding myself of everything, I guess. Huh? How did that happen? Dude, is just not my day because it's not because this thing's not capturing anything. So it's really annoying me. Well, okay. Game crashes. Okay, that's fun, I guess. Try that again, I guess. That's fucking weird. Oh, damn it. No! No, 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 no. You did not. Oh, God, I really hope this saved it. I really hope this thing saved it. Oh, no. Okay, okay. I still have Zanadu. That's fine. I jumped too early. Okay. God damn. Whew. Okay, brother.
The world of sound is governed by
No! Why did I jump? Fuck. Oh, come on, man. I'm throwing right now, man. Okay, brother. What the fuck? Hold on, let me fix something. Is there a way to change the thing? Editor. No, refresh. Go to the dashboard, maybe? See if we can change the name. dashboard. Hmm. All right. Well, we'll have to stick with what we got. Okay. There we go. My habit of clicking when I'm not supposed to is really bad. And then sometimes I just don't click at all because I'm trying to fix it. Because I'm slow. Was? I'm not paying attention, bro. Come on. Focus up.
The world of sound.
Oh, I didn't see the blue portal.
The world of sound is governed by exact numbers.
Alright, that part I'm gonna be stuck on for a bit, I got a feeling. Or I'm just gonna be stuck in the same spot because I can't. For some reason, I keep clicking too late. Ay, scheissarla. Ah, wallaha.
The world of sound is governed by exact numbers.
Come on, bro.